Hello, boys and girls. I am Martina Archer Semple, and I will be teaching grade 6 students science today. All right, I hope you have your pencils and notebooks ready, and please put on your listening ears. Today, we'll be looking at living things. Now, we know that living things are everywhere. So we're going to look at living things, classification of living things, characteristics of living things as well. What is living thing? In biology, an organism in any individual entity that embodies the properties of life. It is a synonym for life form. Organisms are classified by taxonomy into groups such as multicellular animals, plants, and fungi, or unicellular microorganisms such as protists, bacteria, and archaea. Classification of living things. The classification system starts out sorting living organisms into groups based on basic and shape characteristics, such as plants or animals. Then each group is broken down further into more specific classification. It might be helpful to think of classification system like a family tree. From an early age, we all learn the difference between plants and animals. And it probably wasn't until a few years later when we learned that there are different types of animals and plants. Even though they share some similarities, they are entirely different. Centuries ago, living things were classified as either animals or plants. Today, the classification of living things helps us gain a better understanding of the world we live in, our relationship to living things, and understanding biology even better. Living organisms are classified into groups depending on their structure and characteristics. This system was developed in the 18th century by Carl Linnaeus. The classification of species allowed the subdivision of living organisms into smaller and more specialized groups. Kingdoms. The first division of living things is a classification system is to put them into one of 5 kingdoms. And the 5 kingdoms are animals, then we have plants, all green plants. So we have fungi, molds, which are molds, mushrooms, yeast. Then we have protists. For example, amoeba, plasmodium, and chlorella. On the other hand, we have prokaryotes, and that is bacteria and blue-green algae. What is plant? Plants are living things which are all around us. They can grow in soil, in water, even in the desert, or on other plants like here. See, we have plants living on other plants here. Yes. Plants grow in many sizes and shapes. Now, if we look here, we can see the size. We have tall ones, very tall trees, and then they are shaped differently. See, some of them have flat tops, some of them are very pointed, and so on. Yes, some are very tall and woody, with woody trunks, and are called trees, while some plants are short like these here. Yes, some are short with woody stems and are called shrubs. What are they called? Shrubs. Yes, these are called shrubs. Other plants have stems that grow close to the ground like these here, and they are called herbs. There are also plants which are so tiny that they can only be seen with a microscope. Imagine you have to get a microscope to see a plant. So imagine how tiny that plant is that I can't even show you. All right, examples of some plants found in the environment. I know you know all sorts of plants. You have plants in your backyard, you have plants on your veranda. You can go outside and you can look and see all sorts of plants, right? So let's name a few. We have soursop. This is a lovely soursop plant. Did you see it? Yes. And here we have the breadfruit plant. And then we have something called black sage across here. Black sage we used to make tea. Good. Then we have the cherry plant. Now you know cherry is very important. Then we have the watermelon plant that is running there, and all sorts of plants. I guess you can name some more plants found in your environment. All right, let's continue. What is an animal? I guess you all know what animals look like. Right, but what exactly is an animal? An animal is a living organism that feeds on organic matter, typically having specialized sense organs and nervous system, and able to respond rapidly to stimuli. Now, let's discuss, or let us give examples about some animals that are found in your community. All right, let's go. Yes, we have cow. So here we have cow, sheep. There's a dog, right? We have a rabbit there. We have a cat. Yes, so those are some animals that found in our community. I guess you can name some more animals you may have in your homes or animals found in your environment, right? Okay, so all living things share life processes such as growth, reproduction. Most scientists use 7 types or 7 life processes or characteristics to determine whether something is living or non-living. We have movement. Now, what is movement? Movement, all living things move in some way or the other. I guess we all can move, right? If we hear a rhythm, we can move to it, right? So movement. This may be obvious, such as animals that are able to walk, or less obvious, such as plants that have parts that move to track the movement of sun. If you put a container at your window with a little plant in it, eventually you're going to know where you have the majority of the sun, because that is the direction the plant would be leaning towards, right? So then we have respiration. Respiration is a chemical reaction that happens within cells to release energy from food, a process in which one or more substances are changed into different substances. Then we have sensitivity, the ability to detect changes in surrounding environment. For example, when we talk about sensitivity, for example, if you're walking next to, there's a fire here, Would you walk through the fire? No, you would walk away from it because of the heat. You become sensitive because you can feel the heat, right? So that is what we're talking about, the ability to detect changes in the surrounding environment. Growth. All living things grow, just like you boys and girls are growing, right? Growth. Then we have reproduction, the ability to reproduce and to pass genetic information onto their offspring, right? Then we have excretion, getting rid of waste. So you know when you get up in the morning, you want to go and use the washroom, right? Getting rid of waste. Then we have nutrition, the intake and use of nutrients. This occurs in very different ways in different kinds of living things. For you boys and girls who weren't here, we're going to recap what we would have done earlier in the lesson. Yes, today we look at living things, classification of living things, characteristics of living things, right? And we say living thing in biology is an organism in any individual entity that embodies the properties of life. Organisms are classified by taxonomy into groups such as multicellular animals, plants, and fungi or fungi, and unicellular microorganisms such as protists, bacteria, and archaea. We also looked at the classification of living things. And we say the classification system starts out by sorting living organisms into groups based on basic and shaped characteristics, such as a plant or animal. Then each group is broken down further into more specific classification. It might be helpful to think of classification system as a family tree. Yes. So remember, from an early age, we all learned the difference between plants and animals. And it probably wasn't until a few years later when we learned that there are different types of animals and different types of plants, even though they share some similarities, they are entirely different. Centuries ago, living things were classified as either plants or animals. Today, the classification of living things helps us gain a better understanding of the world we live in, our relationship to living things, and understanding biology better overall. Thank you, boys and girls. I am Martina Archer saying until our next lesson.